Green energy turned out to be the big winner in the fiscal cliff deal. A dozen provisions, 12 of them in the bill, extended hefty subsidies for the industry in 2013. More investments we can't afford and shouldn't make. So how much bang are taxpayers getting for their buck? Joining me now, Robert Bryce, Senior Fellow for the Manhattan Institute. Robert, welcome back to the show. So we got $12 billion in tax credits over 10 years. What will we get for that?
Jerry, if you look at it from the jobs perspective, which, remember, this is what the wind energy lobby pushed over and over for months in their effort to get the production tax credit extended, they said that if the tax credit was not extended, there would be about 37,000 jobs lost. Well, if you just figure this a $12 billion price tag for those jobs, do the simple math, we're talking, what, $329,000 per job saved. It's an absurd number.
Well, you might as well just stroke a check and send it out to those people instead of bothering with the wind energy.
Sure.
Here's a number that astonishes me. So 84% of infrastructure, this is wind energy infrastructure, fails to produce when demand is the greatest. What are you talking about? That's crazy.
This has been long been the problem with the wind energy sector, Jerry, that does not produce wind energy. It does not produce electricity, does not produce electricity when demand is the highest. You can look at here in Texas, where there is more installed wind energy capacity than any other state. The state's grid operator, ERCOT, counts 8.7% of the installed wind energy capacity as reliable. Look at other grids around the country. The same issue. When demand is the highest, when electricity prices are the highest, the wind isn't blowing. It's in the summer. And so this is useless infrastructure when it comes to peak demand times for electricity.
But the president and the White House and the EPA, they want us to pay for it. I mean, it's expensive. It doesn't work well. So why are we even bothering? Why don't we let the private sector do it? If it's such a great deal, let's let them do it.
I think you ran down some of these issues in the previous segment, Jerry, when you talked about this fiscal cliff bill being a prime example of pork barrel spending for Congress. Look, you get an extension of the tax credit for three-wheeled electric vehicles. Three-wheeled electric vehicles? Two-wheeled? I haven't seen any electric vehicles. Two-wheeled, three-wheeled, four-wheeled, five-wheeled? I mean, this is another example of Congress trying to pick winners in the energy sector. And unfortunately for this administration, they have this fixation really on a lot of energy sources and projects that simply don't work.
Don't forget about the algae, my friend. There's the algae. Who thinks that's going to work? Who in their right? I mean, is that a bunch of professors in some obscure school somewhere who think this is a viable, going idea?
Algae has shown some promise. Okay, I'm not going to dismiss it out of hand. If you can use photosynthesis to produce algae on a large scale, maybe it works. The one that sticks in my craw, Jerry, is the cellulosic ethanol provision. Here's an industry that has never produced any sizable quantities of ethanol at market prices, and yet they get an extension of the tax credit. The amount of land that would be needed to make cellulosic ethanol work, it just boggles the mind. It doesn't work, won't work, can't work, and yet they got an extension of their tax credits in this bill. It's just another bad example of Congress making bad energy policy.
Let's talk about something that does work, that the administration has turned its back on, and that's the coal industry, which apparently is going great guns in other parts of the world, but not here.
It's a remarkable story, Jerry. I appreciate you bringing it up. If you look at what's happening in the U.S., coal consumption is declining rapidly. But what is happening globally? If you look at the report that came out of the IEA, the International Energy Agency, just last month, they're looking at and reporting on booming global coal production and global consumption. Over the next 5 years alone, global coal consumption will increase by as much as the coal use of the U.S. and Russia combined. So this fixation on renewables here in the U.S., we're patting ourselves on the back for wind and these other things. The reality is that CO2 emissions globally are soaring largely because of the coal consumption globally, which is a function of electricity demand.
Well, I got to tell you, there is a very positive energy story in the U.S., but it has nothing to do with anything we really talked about today. It has everything to do with natural gas. That's the future, is it not? I mean, isn't that where we're going right now?
Well, the U.S. now, whether it's oil or natural gas, both of them are incredibly positive stories. The Bakken Shale in North Dakota, the Utica Shale in Ohio, the Bakken in Pennsylvania, the Barnett here in Texas, the Haynesville in Louisiana. These are economic growth stories that are going to continue for decades to come. They're incredibly positive, and of course, we can count on the Sierra Club, Greenpeace, et cetera, to being to opposing them. And now, thanks to Matt Damon, the new Promised Land movie.
Well, Robert, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for coming on. Come back anytime.
Right,
we'll do some movie
Jerry.
reviews next time. How about that?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.